Welcome to the Be Your Soul podcast. I'm your host, Sky Bradshaw. This podcast is presented in 3 segments to support the energy of your authentic self. Each segment builds into the next, creating what we hope is a valuable tool for your own self-growth. So be sure to listen through to the end because the last segment has helpful tools and tips on how to do the work. Today's topic is going the distance, and our guest will be Gael McAllister of Running with Gael. But first, let's center ourselves and tune in to the Unclouded Heart segment of our show for spirit messages on today's topic of going the distance. Allow yourself to tune in, relaxing into your body, relaxing into your energy, relaxing into your emotions. And as we breathe in through our nose and out through our mouth, allowing ourselves to relax. We open up space to invite the ancestors, loved ones, and friends to come together today to heal and guide us and lift us to the highest version of ourselves in the light of the universe. So we may hear what we need to hear, know what we need to know, connect how we need to connect, and be what we need to be for our highest and best good. And the highest and best good of all involved. As we open up space to the message of going the distance. Going the distance. What does that mean or feel like in your world? Sometimes we can think of it as crossing a finish line or completing a project or getting that gold star that we so much want on our paper. But to me, going the distance is allowing ourselves to do that consistent, persistent work. There's a Haitian saying that says, little by little, the bird builds its nest. And to me, that's what going the distance looks like. It looks like step by step, moving towards a direction until soon we find ourselves there. If we think of hiking the mountain, as we're hiking it, unless we're rock climbing, we literally don't know the heights that we're making. Each step of the winding path of wood just is one more step until after 100 steps, 1,000 steps, we come out on the edge of the mountain and look down and realize just how far we've come. If we can tune into that consistent, persistent work within ourselves, it allows us to open up space into knowing and understanding that we can do anything if we take it one step at a time. Ways to support this work can be difficult, because often we are in an overstimulated, distractible society that doesn't allow us to look at the culmination of things in a succinct and heart-centered way. That's why identifying your why do you want to climb the mountain? Why do you want to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish? It allows for you to see where you would like to be while also staying present in where you are to take that next step. By creating that tangible view of why you want to be where you are, it allows you to know you want to look over the edge of the mountain and see the beautiful view, but you don't have to get caught up at the very first step in the fact that you aren't there yet. So take some time to tap in to how you are giving healthy, appreciative connections to the things that you really are trying to accomplish in life. How are you approaching them with gratitude? How are you centering them in a space of peace? How are you knowing that by taking this one small step, a monumental path opens in front of you? So surround yourself by the ability of knowing you can do this one step at a time, if you give yourself grace, support yourself with dedication, and embrace the gratitude of your ability to connect.
Production of the Be Your Soul podcast is made possible in part by Island of Salvation Botanica. A visit to the Island of Salvation Botanica will enlighten you in the rich blend of culture and spiritual traditions that is New Orleans. The shop carries Vodou religious supplies, medicinal herbs, works of art, and more. It's considered to be one of the most authentic Vodou shops in New Orleans by locals and visitors alike. Located in a project co-developed by Sally Ann Glassman, the New Orleans Healing Center on St. Claude Avenue is only steps away from the French Quarter. Stay tuned for a conversation about going the distance with Gael McAllister of Run with Gael and Sky Bradshaw.
Welcome to the Skylight section of the Be Your Soul podcast. Today, I am here with guest Gael McAllister and our producer, Audrey. Gael is an RRCA certified distance running coach, in addition to being an integrative health coach through Duke University Center for Integrative Medicine. She brings mindfulness and meditation into her coaching styles to bring a whole body method to her practice. Hi, Gael. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
I am good. I hope you are. We appreciate you being here today. And today we're going to talk about going the distance and what that means in a lot of ways. And I'm a big fan of what I consider consistent, persistent work, like taking those, the Haitian saying is little by little, the bird builds its nest, like taking those little steps in the right direction that create big change and, a big results in the long run. So that process of putting together things and taking something through the entire process. And I thought you would be a great source of wisdom and connection when it comes to that going the distance thought process.
I have been running. I've been running for about 30 years now, distance running, I will say. And I found that it really has expanded a lot of different ways. I think as a 18, 19-year-old, when you start running, you run for very 18, 19-year-old reasons. You want to look a certain way and you want to fit into certain clothes and that's what you do. But as I've aged and the practice has grown, at this point, I just call it high-speed bird watching because most of the reason for running just happens to be a connection to nature, a connection to the neighborhood, a connection to the seasons, being able to listen to your body, being able to really pay attention to the breath, kind of beginning the practice and ending the practice with a lot of gratitude because it is a gift, to be in a physical body and to have it be a healthy body. So, being in that space is very important. And the more you run, the less you have to think about the actual, physicality of it. You're not worried about, how you look or what the clothes are. You're worried, you have a very different relationship to it. So I think that's very important.
Absolutely. And that feels like, immersing yourself in that, in that enter in and like in all things. And even though you're in movement while you're immersing yourself, it's that shifting into whole presence, whole body's presence, mind, body, and energy presence, in an action, which feels really powerful.
I think it couples a sitting meditation very well. There are a lot of people that don't sit very well, or beginning meditators that find it very challenging to kind of still the mind. Running can be a kind of a segue into that. If you don't sit well, sometimes it helps to walk a little bit and then graduate to running and get into that flow state in that way, because it's all the same. We're working on our breath. We're working on staying aligned. We're working on our interconnectedness. So however it looks, that's
right. Use the vessel that gets you there.
Exactly.
That's powerful. What advice would you give to someone when it comes to that, big differences with small connective or collective actions? Like, what would you, if you had to, obviously, can't sum it up in a few sentences, but if you had to give like some quick advice for people, I would say quick advice for like getting started, quick advice for staying to the path. Like what would what would your sound bites be?
I would say that the highest place that you can come from with your practice is going to be the one that's going to give you the most longevity. So, like I said, when you start out and it's about finishing a race or something that's a little less long term, that's one way to do it. But if you, like I said, if you can tie it to a gratitude practice, being very, very, grateful for being in this healthy body or being mobile at all, it's something that you shouldn't ever take for granted. So coming from this place of really having a depth for it, having a understanding that the more healthy you are and the less time that you have to think about your own health, the better family member you're going to be, the better friend you're going to be. Nobody that's in pain is really feeling very helpful. So if you can be in a place of preventing whatever is down the line, putting it off for a little bit, and being a better friend and a better partner and a better parent, then those are all great things to be. So those are higher level places. And if you can remember that when you wake up and you're a little tiny bit achy and it's kind of rainy and it's cold, and just remember why you're doing it. Those are the kind of push through things that you need to be grounded in, because the dress for the wedding you have to go to is great, but it's not gonna get you through February, because February is not a good month.
Yeah, each class that I teach, each time that I start a course, one of the first things that we identify in the course is understanding your why. Mm-hmm. And we have different levels of why, that surface why, fitting in the dress. then we have like our core why, like our heart-centered why. And then we have that the carnal why, which is more along the lines of like that deeper goal, like long-term health, better connection to family members. And so we can look at all of those whys being important, and we might be motivated by different whys at different times. But if we can tune into that, like, okay, here's the short-term airy why, here's that heart-centered, what that does for me, why, and then this is my physical why of like what that might look like. I always think that's great advice. So thank you. That's how we start every course, is getting those whys checked off. So then when I don't want to get up and run today, then you're like, why am I doing this? Oh, that's right.
Yes, the intention is very, very important. And also, because I run outside, and that's the method that I enjoy, there's so many benefits, just even if you don't happen to see, something really good, because I've seen some really good wildlife. And this is me running in, pretty much the city. I do kind of run through a park, but most of it is just, your average city kind of thing, running through downtown, running through college campuses sometimes. And just, to be able to, view different bird behavior, different seasons, the way that the trees are blooming or not blooming, all of those things are really important to everybody's mental health. I think we all kind of figured that out in the last few years. If you didn't know it before, you know it now.
That's true.
Getting out in nature is very important for your mental health. So that's a big tie.
What is advice that you give people when it comes to change? Like, what could you say to someone that would support them feeling that they can make change? Because I believe change happens and growth is inevitable. Mm-hmm. And so like, how do we turn change into growth, and create that space?
I think being very kind to yourself is something that I've noticed in particular, because I work with a lot of women. That's not something that internal voice tends to be very unkind. You would never, ever talk to anybody else like you talk to yourself. Mm-hmm. And I feel like when you're looking toward change, especially a change that, depending on your level of fitness throughout your life, maybe this is going to be your first time ever being active. Maybe you've been active before and you let it fall off. But being very kind to yourself and knowing that any kind of change does not ever, or usually doesn't look linear. There are some really good times where it's the spring and it's great and the weather's perfect and you feel really good and you're at it and then something happens and you get off your schedule and to be very kind with knowing that it's okay to not have it always look the way that you perceive it to look, or the way it looks to someone else. And that tends to keep you on a path that's a lot more that has a lot more longevity. Because if you want it to look a certain way, the more rigid you are with the way you feel like it's supposed to look, the less success you're going to have, because life's not very rigid.
That's true. So true. And when we create that expectation of perfection, then we're always holding a carrot in front of us instead of being able to celebrate the tiny wins that we have and know that a stumble is not a fall if we don't align perfectly on that day with what we're doing.
Exactly. And I think it's very helpful, or it has been helpful for me to mention to people that I've worked with that I've been running for as long as I have. And it always, those first like 5-10 minutes just don't feel that good. Going from a place of rest to a place of activity is just, it's against the laws of physics sometimes. And it just doesn't feel great. And having that push through and knowing that even when you do it for a really long time, there is going to be that kind of resistance, because your body is doing what your body does, which is conserve energy well. And pushing through that is its own kind of reward, because when you do that, you kind of get a lot more confidence in sometimes other areas of your life. You're like, okay, I did that and it didn't feel great, but I got over it and I didn't injure myself and it was perfect in the way that it was. So let's take that to other realms.
Yeah. So what's like one thing that you can tune into for people that allows them to move past that obstacle? Obviously, grace, as we were just talking about, giving ourselves grace, or, like allowing non-judgment. But is there another technique that you can get those people past that first 10 minutes that allows them to move perceived obstacles out of the way?
I feel like a lot of practice in understanding your body's response to discomfort versus pain. That's very important. The number one thing that I want to push for everyone is avoiding injury. That's why, the goal oriented, like I've got to get to this spot by 15 minutes or I need to finish this race by this time, is never a way that I'm not going to coach that way. I'm like, you need somebody else to do that. Because what I'm interested in helping people do is to be very, very good at understanding their own body, because that is such a valuable tool, obviously with exercise, but for everything. Running is a good way to do that, because it will tell you very, very quickly, this is uncomfortable and you need to push through it, or this is pain and you need to stop.
Right. And where the best version of yourself is, because, pushing through discomfort can take us to that best version of ourselves, while pushing ourselves into pain is not it. Like that energy is going to beget itself. Pain begets pain.
Mm-hmm. And in the beginning, if you're doing this alone without a coach, or with maybe another person that's not as familiar with running, I would say 100%. If you're not sure, walk. There's absolutely nothing wrong with walking. You can see the birds better that way. So walk, and then get that space. Feel a lot more aligned, and then continue. It is important too that you should be able to hold a conversation, or at least be able to talk a little bit whenever you're running. So, if you're doing it alone, I would suggest, having something like some kind of music. And then if you can't, kind of whisper along with the words, maybe it's time to slow it down a little bit. That's a good gauge to gauge where your breath is at that point, because you should never be so uncomfortable that you can't be able to, just say a few words, because that's where a runner should be, is comfortable enough to be able to speak, but be challenged.
That's a nugget. I like that.
There you go. There's a nugget.
There's a nugget. So is there a time when you had a hard time pushing through an obstacle and that you want to share? A lot of times through our own stories, other people gain a lot. So do you have a success story of pushing through an obstacle that you want to share with us, or?
Specific to running, or just in general in life?
Just in general in life.
In general in life. I will say that, okay, so I have twins, and I had them a little bit on the late side. So I was 38, and they both had colic. And I was a new mom. I went with no babies and came home with two. I was kind of isolated as far as physicality. And most of my friends don't have kids. And if they did, they had much older kids. So I was in a space of not having really any of my tools, because my tools had always been meeting with friends, running, which I couldn't run because the 2 hour sleep cycle and also breastfeeding, doing the pumping and I felt like a milk cow. So I was like, oh, this is very uncomfortable. And having kind of all of my tools disappear at one time was very, very, very challenging. It grounded me. It almost took me down because it was, everybody kind of has a period where things kind of fall out, but when everything that you use to kind of refuel your tank is off limits for a period of time and you don't know when it's going to be back online, it can be a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is the foundation for, what put me on a path of very, very regular meditation, or at least, laid that foundation for, because of meditation being so accessible, it doesn't always feel comfortable. Obviously, you're going to have to be able to really focus if you want to do it with young children around, those kinds of things. But it's something that can't be taken away because nobody can take away your breath. And if they do, then you're good. You did it. You did it. You won.
Yeah.
So you transitioned into better places. So I feel like having that be a part of my journey was, looked tragic, and of course became the foundation of who I am. It's how I start my day. It's how I end my day. It's
right.
like, no, I won't forget that one.
Well, yeah, those dark night of the souls where we're like in such question while we're walking through them. That's a good consistent, persistent, or going the distance. Like while we're in them, we are like, I'm never going to make it to the other side. Like this seems so dire. And then when we see that glimpse or glimmer of lights on the other side, then we're like, oh, this wasn't the most comfortable journey, but I see why. Like now I know where this was taking me or what this was about. And so that's a great example in that.
Yeah. It was, that was a great example of getting a really, really good life tool out of what seems like the most dire situation.
Yeah. And we know that the light always follows the darkness. We just have to keep moving through those spaces, even when it seems like there's not going to be the light at the end. And that can sometimes be the most difficult is, like, how do we one step at a time just know and have faith in ourselves and have faith in the universe that, it might not be comfortable. We might not like it. It might not seem at that time that there's going to be any good out of it, but the only way out is through.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that is truth. That is very much the truth.
Do you have anything else that you want to add on the topic or in general when we look at like going the distance? We have 3 questions I always ask, but before we get to those, I thought I'd give you a chance to just anything else that comes up, if there is anything.
I can't think of too much, but I just, of course, can't, say enough about the gratitude practice. I think we all know that is a really big part of being able to go forward in especially in the times that we're in. We are in high stress times, and so being able to have a practice that is really grounded in thankfulness and being very, very focused and intentional with looking around and understanding how good we all have it. So I can say that's my spiel.
And that's what gets us through the dark night of the soul too. That is what gets us through the dark night of the soul is being able to identify those things. So the 3 questions that I ask every guest, the first is, what do you think it means to be your soul?
I think for me, it feels like something, basically alignment, having everything feel aligned and in a flow state so that you are able to spread the light in whatever way that looks for you. When you're less focused on the external and you're able to really just be a channel for what needs to come through you, it's the best place to be. And I think we've all gotten there in our individual spaces, whether that looks like playing music or whatever, but if you can get there consistently and hold that space for as long as possible, I think we all need that.
Yeah, that's the truth. Yeah, it's the truth. So what's one thing that you do no matter what to be sure that you get your self-care in?
Meditation. I've scheduled two, so I try to do one in the morning and at night, and that way, if something falls off, if something gets busy or whatever, you always have another chance. So so that at least you're getting that one in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty consistent. It's it's a time that I've built into my schedule, and of course I can be very flexible with how that looks because ecstatic dance can be a type of meditation. Those types, anything that's I've put aside to, get in a place where I am receptive to whatever spirit has to tell me. That's where, that's what meditation looks like to me.
I agree with that.
Yes, absolutely.
And so in that alignment that you were talking about, that feeling centered and balanced, how does it show up in your worlds? Like, I think as you were saying, and literally probably every guest I've interviewed so far talks about how we like meet in alignment and then kind of get, cross over it and touch it so often.
Exactly.
Like, what does that look like to you?
What does being aligned look like?
Yeah.
I think it looks like a place of feeling set, like almost limitless energy. Of course, energy has limits, but it feels almost like, I love the analogy of a tree and being, very grounded and being very, because that alignment feels very tree-like to me. It feels like this energy comes from such a deep place that it just can't be, challenged. And then you feel so much more capable to volunteer and to do those things in your community and in your family and for yourself, because you're like, oh, I've got plenty of this. This is not, this is abundant. This is like air. I can't use this up. And that's what alignment looks like to me. That day of good rest and feeling charged up and ready to put whatever you're supposed to put out into the world.
I love that. Yeah. And that, rooting in while still, the branches are still moving, but
yeah,
that root of energy coming, in a solid place is a beautiful vision to think of.
I do enjoy my trees. I tell you, I'm a tree watcher too.
Yeah,
they're pretty consistent, so they're always in the same place. I get to see all the trees and how they transform through my runs.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. Do you have anything upcoming that you want to bring up, or please let everybody know how to get in touch with you in case they want to tune into more of your amazing nuggets.
more of my nuggets. Right now, I'm currently in an Indigenous medical intuitive course because I'm trying to integrate some of that knowledge into the wellness pile. So I'm hoping, in the fall, the summer is not a great time for new runners, which I tend to prefer to work with, just because humidity and it's a really challenging time. And of course, kids are out of school and it's just not a great time. So I will look for trying to do something, especially integrating that medical intuitive piece and whatever that looks like. There's no telling what that will look like because I'm only halfway through the course. But I think it'll be important for me to learn it and feel comfortable with it, and then hopefully bestow some of that with people that I work with, because obviously that's the big part of this piece, is being able to listen to your body and be able to have an aspect of prevention in that journey, so that it's better to get it off, cut it off at the head. We're gonna easier to not get it than to cure it.
Right.
So yeah, but Run with Gael with no spaces, and the Gael is Gael. That's the best way to just Google me, and you can definitely send me an email or text in that way. But yeah, I'm looking forward to being able to integrate some different things come the fall.
Yeah, and you're such a beautiful vessel. Like the way that you receive and then transmute it into giving is such a beautiful way that you do that. So
thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And so I highly suggest people to tune in with you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Sky.
Absolutely.
Production of the Be Your Soul podcast is made possible in part by Emerge Skin and Soul, located at 2002 North Elm Street in Greensboro, North Carolina. Emerge Skin and Soul is so much more than just skincare, because you are so much more than just your skin. Emerge believes in offering a skin-to-soul experience. working hand in hand with you to achieve your skincare and self-care goals from the inside out. Offering massage, Reiki, and customized skincare plans, coupled with holistic modalities that bring skin, heart, and whole body into balance and harmony. Visit emergeskinandsoul.com today to learn more and book your appointment. Coming up next, That's What Sky Says, with tools to help you use today's topic of going the distance in your daily life.
In this segment, I offer tools and guidance that I have found helpful in my practice, and maybe you will too. Today's exercise, Going the Distance, is more than just a song performed in the 1997 film Hercules. Although the message there is pretty strong too, Hercules, who possesses godlike strength and finds it increasingly hard to fit in with his peers, uses the song to plead to the gods to help him find where he truly belongs. For today's exercise, we will tap into our superhuman strength through the consistent, persistent work of learning to identify and then change a habit to create lasting growth. From the time we are born, our energy flows in a particular pattern. Good, bad, or neutral, our energy gets used to a certain flow process. This can be helpful in guiding us upwards or stick us in cycles that can be difficult to understand. Once we become aware of these energy habits, we can take better energetic care of ourselves and gain focus of our directional positions in regards to them. So let's dive in to how to change a habit for our benefit. Discussions range on how long it takes to break a habit. Some say it can be as little as 2 weeks or as long as 6 months. One thing is for sure, our dedication to change is what makes the difference. Here we will talk about our tools to create change and how to instill consistent and persistent change behavior to reinforce lasting growth. All habits at one time had an original function. At one point, even negative energy and thoughts had a purpose, but have gotten out of control. These need to be redirected towards more productive thoughts and energies that align with the you of now to allow for solution-based actions. This will be an extended journaling exercise that is done over a 21-day period of time. If that sounds like a long time, then just think about how many years your energy has been in this pattern. Taking 21 days to create change is a drop in the bucket compared to that. We can take an unhealthy pattern or behavior and shift it into a positive one by becoming aware of how often our energies focus in that direction. That is why bringing awareness to the habit is the first step of change. As we talked about in the last episode, we can't fix what we don't see. To bring forward a clear picture of habit, we will take a full week to pay attention and bring awareness to when the unhealthy habit energy is more likely to creep up. This gives us a firm foundation of supporting our why. An example of this would be your thoughts and energy going to the worst case scenario instead of the solution each time a challenge arises. Your habit might look like believing the worst before you have proof or knowledge, having the other shoe is going to drop mentality in tough scenarios, creating stories of conflict that don't really exist, replaying old news and heartache stories, even though they are over, looking for ways people are out to do you wrong, only seeing the negative side of a story, and things that are similar. For this first week, you just want to log in your journal when, in what realm of life, and how your tendency to think the worst took over. This will show a pattern of where you are more likely triggered or where the wound that created the trigger came from. Take a dedicated page of your journal and just bring awareness. The second set of 7 days, you want to continue to log the habit, but now it's time to add an acceptance and forgiveness piece to the puzzle. Understanding that you are having a particular energetic reaction for a specific purpose is important. Learned behavior, cycle behavior, carnal behavior, or just regular old normal behavior all stem from a function-based place. If you want to break an individual type of energetic behavior, you must come to grips with whatever function it was serving. otherwise known as acceptance. This will allow you to also understand the solution that links to it, as well as which categories in your life it connects with. Why did you get that ping of fear, pain, or powerlessness? And more importantly, what do you get out of it? If we can accept that in the past, the ping was valuable and helped us, but now it's habit or compulsion energy, then we can be more productive when it comes to the next step, solution. So think about if fixing things feels good, so you always need something to fix, or if diving into low energy is a means of coming out of it with a high energy rush. If you're making yourself small because your critic is driving the energy instead of the soul self, or any number of reasons you may still have the habit energy attached to you. If we can accept and say, thank you, habit energy. At one point in my life, you were a valuable tool, but that time in my life is over, and so is the need for this tool. I have other, healthier tools now, and I will take you out for use only when it's appropriate. This allows that energy to go back to the space and place from which it came, and us to be able to move into healing. Then we move into the third set of 7 days, creating solution. Creating solution comes from identifying what about your energy, thoughts, and actions you would like to change, and then replacing it with positive solution-based energy and behaviors. We took time to create awareness surrounding the habit and then accept and acknowledge it once served a purpose. Now it's time to replace the habit with something healthier. Say, for example, when you see two people talking across the room and looking in your direction, that you immediately believe they're gossiping about you. What if instead of allowing your energy to bind and boil into a negative pattern of anxiety, worry, and self-doubt, that you decide to think of 3 positive alternatives? You could think of 3 positive opposing situations that might be happening instead of immediately assuming the worst. Are you entirely sure that your perception is accurate? How can you open up to a solution to connect to them and their energy in a positive way? You can then also recognize it is possible your mind may have created a non-fact to discredit your self-esteem energy. And that thought was ultimately created by your ego, the critic, or your imposter syndrome. Then you can release your attachment to them and the situation by saying, they are just as likely to not be talking about me as they are to be. Maybe they're saying something good. Or I know if I were in their position, I wouldn't be worried about what I was doing across the room. This gives you a wider understanding of yourself, a broader look at the picture, and the ability to shift into let it go mentality. Give it a try on days 14 to 21 and see how things shift in your energy. If you were just thinking, I wish I had this written down somewhere, then remember, Patreon members not only get early access listening, but a PDF worksheet of each of the episode's exercises for as little as $9 a month. So check it out at patreon.com/beyoursoulsky. And as always, there are links to the Patreon on our website. This exercise is just one of many in my Understanding Energy and Action course, a 26-module virtual course that is packed full of video lessons, previously recorded live class sessions, worksheets, meditations, and more. You can find it as well on our website, www.beyoursoul.org.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Be Your Soul podcast. This podcast is published on the 2nd and 4th Fridays of each month. We hope you'll like, follow, and comment on your podcast platform and share this podcast with your family and friends. You can stay connected in between episodes. Visit Be Your Soul Sky if you're on Facebook. On Instagram, it's Be Your Soul Podcast, and you'll find more information at our website, beyoursoul.org. This podcast is produced at Muddy Creek Studios.